Now, the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights, who was recently denied entry to Israel, detained at Ben Gurion Airport for 20 hours and expelled from the country, Professor Richard Falk, who I believe is a member of the Lawyers Guild, if I'm not mistaken. Richard Falk, Professor Falk, has just today, I didn't have time to include this in my talk, suggested that this was a very unusual conflict and that the civilian population was prevented from even fleeing the scene of battle, and that therefore this might make us a new and unique violation of the rules of war. I literally read this just before I came, but in any case. International bodies and individual governments may investigate, prosecutions may be undertaken, and indeed some perpetrators may be detained and tried if they travel abroad from Israel. But this is not central in my view. What is crucial, in my view, is that an approach based on law be adopted not by everybody else, but in particular by the United States and the European Union. And I say this for the following reason. It is the United States and the European Union which have sanctioned and supported Israel's 18-month blockade of the Gaza Strip since the summer of 2007, in a transparent attempt to employ collective punishment against the civilian population in an attempt to force it to turn on its rulers, in this case on the Hamas government. I am not a lawyer. I'm not an international lawyer, certainly. But it is clear that without this support, such a blockade would not have been sustainable, and this blockade, in and of itself, may constitute a violation of international law. And in any case, it is a grave blot on the record of the United States and the EU that they supported it. They are the enablers of this policy. Without them, this policy could not possibly have continued. If, as I am sure we all hope and will work for, the new administration is moving towards a greater respect for international bodies, for multilateral diplomacy, and especially for the Constitution and US and international law, then it would be worse than an anomaly for this administration to continue to move in the opposite direction, where Israel, the Palestinians, and the Arab states are concerned. If we oppose and will end torture and inhumane treatment, if we oppose and will end extraordinary rendition and illegal indeterminate detentions at Guantanamo, CIA black sites, and elsewhere, then we must oppose and end the same things in Israeli, Palestinian, Syrian, and Egyptian prisons. If we are belatedly about to end our occupation of Iraq, the poisoned fruit of an illegal and immoral war, then we must end the illegal occupations of Arab territory by Israel, and we must see to the removal of Israel's illegal settlements there. If we desire to improve the image of the United States in the world, something that the President has said he wanted to do, if we want to do this by halting the employment of overwhelming US military power in circumstances, whether in Iraq or Afghanistan or elsewhere, that necessarily and inevitably harm large civilian populations, we must apply the same standards, not only to Hamas rockets fired in violation of the laws of war against civilian populations in Israel, but also to Israel's use of its far more lethal arsenal against Palestinian civilians or other civilians in the region. Lebanon is the other example, of course. Finally, if the United States hopes to strengthen the United Nations and to involve the UN in the search for an exit from Iraq and a solution to Afghanistan, and if we seek the legitimacy of treaties and UN Security Council resolutions for the American presence in Iraq while it lasts, we cannot, which we've done, we cannot turn our back on international law and UN Security Council resolutions when it comes to Israel. Israel finds it inconvenient to obey these resolutions, and thus an assiduous campaign has taken place in this country over many years to blacken the image of the United Nations. This campaign has succeeded in desensitizing many Americans to the fact that the Security Council resolutions that are flouted by Israel could not have passed were they opposed by an American veto, and that these resolutions therefore represent the judgment and the policy of successive US administrations. In the 26 years between 67 and 86 and between 92 and 98, the UN Security Council issued 52 resolutions directed against Israeli actions. And the fact that they've never been implemented is of a piece with the past lawlessness of many American administrations. This convergence between American disregard for international law and between Israel's disregard for the United Nations was consummated during the apogee of the neoconservative creed under the administration of our previous president. This was a moment mercifully just ended when the faith-based and fact-free foreign policies of Israel and the United States, both based on force and in contempt for international law, the UN, diplomacy, and multilateral approaches, were in lockstep. We must do everything in our power to ensure that this does not continue to be the case under the new administration. And if we don't do something about it, there is the danger that it will continue to be the case. We must all work to ensure not only that the United States respect international law and US law and the Constitution, but that it demands from all actors the same respect for international law and the United Nations that this administration now preaches. This applies to the regimes of American allies in the Arab world in their treatment of their own populations, which is in gross violation of international standards of human rights, as much as it applies to our favorite ally, Israel. This is a case, in conclusion, when morality and law on the one hand go hand in hand with the national interest on the other. Our image in the world has suffered. It has suffered not because of our values. We are told they hate us, or we were told by the previous incumbent, that they hate us because of our values. People the world over appreciate our values. Our image has suffered. The position of the United States in the world has suffered because of our flouting of these values. Most important among them, respect for the rule of law. Thank you very much.